So technically my name is Michael Cotrell. My stage name is Brooklyn Steele-Tate. I've been in Cincinnati for 20 plus years. What else you want to know? My pronouns are he, him, his. I always go, how many? There's got to be three of them at least. He, him, and his. And I am a gay male. Oh my gosh, I moved here and I want to say 2002. I think that's correct because I had surgery in 2001 for hernia, and I moved like right after that. And so that was the end of 2001. So about the beginning of 2002, I moved to Cincinnati to be a part of an organization called the Imperial Sovereign Queen City Court of the Buckeye Empire. Yes, so that is the ISQCCB is the acronym for it, and it is a fundraising organization here in Cincinnati that has raised over $1.5 million for local charities, basically. So I became a part of that, and then I was coming here every weekend back and forth between here and Lima, which is where I lived, and then I guess it was like, I can't keep driving like this, it was crazy. So I was literally leaving Lima after work on Friday, driving here. Sunday I would drive back Sunday night or Monday morning to go back to work. And then one day I just said, I need to move to Cincinnati. Moved here, and it's been wonderful. Originally from Texas, moved to Lima when I was in a sophomore in high school. My parents always lived in Lima. I lived with my grandparents in Austin, Texas. And then when I was a sophomore, my mom said, I need you to come live with me. And I said, okay, fine. And so I kind of moved back home, moved in with her and my dad. And then it was fine. You know, Lima is a very, 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 very small town. There was one gay bar where my parents actually lived. There's not even a stoplight in the town. It's that small. And so it's not the fantasy you see on Glee. So I publicly started to identify as gay when I was 28. I came out. I had grown up in a religious home, went to church 3 times a week, went to Bible college, did all that kind of good stuff, and enjoyed it for the most part. It was very informational, very educational for me. I'm one of those people that I just learn about all kinds of different things. And so my mom said, she said, do you want to go to this Bible college? And I said, sure. It was 2.5 years going there. It was in Dallas, and I went there. And then when I came home, was the end of '93, and then I moved back to Dallas for a while, and then I went on a couple missions trips. I went to Poland, worked in an orphanage, and I went to Spain during the '92 Olympics, and just did things like that. And then when I was 28, when I was about 25, I started contemplating what it was to be gay, and I started going to gay bars. I shouldn't say gay bars. I should say the gay bar in Lima. And just hang out with friends, and I met some people, and just started contemplating what that was. And then I knew, from an earlier age, that that you're different, and that you want to be things, you want to do things that are different than other people, but you don't know how to comprehend them. And so I started questioning things and questioning who I was. I had dated girls and been with girls, almost married twice, kind of a thing. And then finally, I just said, I think this is who I am. Told my parents, and all hell broke loose. Because they, of course, were, you were going to hell. It wasn't what God wanted. It was a sin. It was, this or that. And so I just finally said, I've got to be who I want to be. And so I just started living the life, had a roommate, that kind of stuff. So it was kind of interesting, that journey, getting to where we are today with my family. They're a little bit more accepting. They don't like it, but they're not against it per se. The weird thing is that my family does not know that I do drag at all. Well, my parents don't. My sister knows, but that's it. So it's been. But since I live here, they don't really, they don't notice anything. They're not on my Facebook page or on my Instagram or anything like that. So, yes, Bible college was fun. It was interesting in the sense that, and the weird thing was, I guess it's weird, is that we had to pick a student ministry. And so my first year, and you had to pick a student ministry every semester. So my first semester, I worked in a nursing home. I went to the nursing home because it was easy to read stories to old people and all that kind of stuff. You're doing that. And then my friend, I met a girl, her name was Jeannie, and she was like, come do my student ministry with us. And so she did Cedar Springs, which in Dallas, Cedar Springs is the gay metropolis. So I was like, okay. And so we went down there. My first adventure down there was pre-Mardi Gras, And so like they did a Mardi Gras right before Mardi Gras happened. And so like the streets are closed off and they do, everybody's out in the open and they're all dressed up and this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God, I saw things that I don't think you're supposed to see when you're that young. But it was very eye-opening, very encouraging in the fact that it made me question what I wanted, who I was, where I was going. And not once did they ever say, like, this is not the right thing to do. It was all about, the integrity of who you were and being, that kind of a person. It taught me a lot about giving back to people. It taught me a lot about being accepting of other people that were different than me. Because you're basically in a hotel room. The men's dormitory was an old hotel that they converted. And so you're in a hotel room with two other guys that are very different than you are. So you learn to be accepting of other people and their idiosyncrasies and all that kind of stuff. And so it taught me a lot of that. It taught me to question a lot of things. So it was good. Interesting, but good. She just told me about my age. No, I'm just kidding. I will be 51 in July. So yeah. I'll be 51 in July, yeah. I came to Cincinnati when I was about 30 years old. I came out when I was 28, so a couple years after that. So yeah, 30 years old, 2002. Yeah, I want to say that. I'm not good at math, but. So yes, I got involved with the Imperial Sovereign Queen City. We'll call it the court. This is what it is for short. So I got involved with the court. A friend of mine who had been, backstory, the court is a fundraising organization and we elect two people to run the organization for a year. And it's run by a board, but these two people are the face of the organization. And we call them an emperor or an empress. And we've also added the term now emprex for non-binary titles. And so it can be, an emperor can be a male presenting as a male, a female presenting as a male. An empress can be a female presenting as a female or male presenting as a female. An emprex can be either or. So, and it's all about raising money for charities, but it's crowns and gowns and jewelries and all this kind of and bling and all this kind of stuff. And we're a chapter of 70 chapters. So there's the main chapter started in San Francisco, and there's chapters pretty much in every city and every state of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And all of them are geared towards raising money for charity, and they're all volunteer. They get paid. Most of them do not get paid to be a part of it. So I got involved because a friend of mine was a past empress. We became friends when he moved back to Lima. And he was like, come down with me to these events, kind of stuff. And I was like, okay. And I wanted to get involved in drag, but I didn't know how I wanted to do it. And this was the easiest way because they took anybody in. They didn't, they were like, well, help you get started, or kind of stuff. But it was all drag is an expensive sport. So, you're buying everything yourself and you're traveling. And I would, you go to all these different coronations, and the coronation is where we elect the new person, somebody stepping down, somebody stepping up. And then you have all this pomp and circumstance that goes with it. And so I got involved during reign 12. We're on reign 32, right? 31 now. So I got involved with reign 12, and I sort of was coming back and forth, kind of stuff. And then during reign 14, I got really committed to it and got involved. And then in reign 16, I stepped up as empress. And so I was empress 16 and 26, and 29, sort of. That's a whole different story. But so I was Empress 16 and 26, which means I ran twice, was elected twice by the community. We have members that they pay $15 a year, and one of their privileges is to vote for the new monarchs. But it's all geared towards raising money for charities. And so predominantly 90% of our charities are local. We do things from like Glisten and PFLAG and Caracal. We do Cincinnati Pride, we do the men's chorus, we do all this kind of stuff. We have a cat adoption team, but we also do bigger ones like the Trevor Project, and we do the Matthew Shepard Foundation. Judy and Matthew Shepard are part of the organization out of San Francisco, so we do a lot for the Matthew Shepard Foundation every year. We pick different charities to work with that are national, a lot of housing, HIV, AIDS-related organizations, educational organizations. When we first started out, it was only LGBT organizations that we worked with. Now we're kind of broad. Any 501c3 will do it. We'll do something for. We do scholarship funds. We do, pretty much anything. And then at the end of the year, when we have our coronation, that's like a big party for us. Somebody stepping down and somebody stepping up. And people come from all over the United States, Canada, Mexico, to these meetings, to these coronations. And they dress all up and they do all these parties and all that kind of stuff. And so it's quite a lot, but it's fun. So typically they're held in bars. So like we'll hold them at the bars, we'll hold them at, usually we only held them in bars. So like we used to do Shooters and Spurs and the Dock and on Broadway and Below Zero and that kind of stuff. Now that a lot of those places are closed, we'll go anywhere somebody invites us. We've held stuff here in the library. We've held stuff at the music hall. We've held things at, of course, different bars. We just got a new venue called the Orbit Room that we started. And so we'll just go and do a drag show. We'll sell Jello shots. We'll, sometimes we just do an informational booth. Just kind of depends on what the venue wants from us. But typically, with the day and age that we're in now, we do Venmo, we do PayPal. So anybody can donate to us online. If they can't come to an event, we do a lot of Facebook stuff, a lot of live events now. With the influx of COVID, we went a lot of live stuff, and that was kind of fun. And so, yeah, anywhere you want us to come, we'll come do something. So Brooklyn came about, let's see, this is so crazy. So when I first started doing this, this was funny because I just did a thing at the Orbit Room, and it was kind of like a drag story hour. And they asked me how I came up with my name. And typically you come with your name like it's your first street and your pet's name, or or you can pick somebody's name that you want to go after. And so I got involved with doing drag. So my friends and I were going to go to a show, and we decided to get all dressed up. It was my very first time getting dressed up, and I was excited about it, whatever. And we go to this show where friends of ours were going to be at, and our friends didn't show up for the show, and so there was no drag show. And so they were like, "Well, you have to go on now. You guys are all dressed up. You should go on and do a number." And I'm like, "I am not doing a number. I didn't have a drag name like that." And so this guy was like, "Oh, you got to do it." And I'm like, "Okay, fine." So we were going to get ready to do it, and I was nervous as all heck. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. And he said, "Well, what's your drag name?" I'm like, "I don't have one." And he said, "We're going to call you Tamara St. James." And I'm like, "Okay." I was like, had no idea where it came from like that. And so I did it for that little 5-minute number. And I was like, I don't like that name. And so one of my favorite movies is Dangerous Minds. And one of the lead characters, her real name is Brooklyn, but she spelled it with a U instead of the double O's. And so I was like, that's my name. I'm gonna choose Brooklyn, and that's kind of a thing. And then Tate came from Steele. We have no idea came from. We have no idea where that came from. But Tate came from my best friend, who had started here and then moved back home, and then we became friends. And he's like, "Take my last name." When I moved here, he said, "Take my last name so people associate us together because I was really popular and it'll help." And I'm like, "Okay." So So I started doing Brooklyn, but I was spelling it with the U, and I did the little dots above the U, so it was like very mysterious or whatever. And then so that's how I got my name. But then when people started, when all the stuff started coming out from Brooklyn with the names on the purses and clothing, all that kind of stuff, all the merchandise came out, people started buying me that stuff, and so I'm like, that's not how you spell my name. But so then it just kind of converged into how it is today. So that's how I got my name. And so when I started coming here, I only came here just to do the court stuff. And then so I was very involved in doing stuff, and so it was very easy to do it that way. And so that's how she came about, and then she has just not died since. She just won't die. And she's retired. I had somebody message me the other day and said, "I know that you retired, but it doesn't look like you're really retired." And I'm like, "Well, I'm sort of retired. I just don't do it as often, but I'm always out doing something, it seems like." But
you're like the Tom Brady.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like going back and forth. I'm like, I don't ever want to put it on again, but I will, but I don't really want to, but I will. So, yeah. So I did have a full-time job. I worked at a nursing home. I was activities director at a nursing home. And then, so I worked Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then I would work every other Saturday. And so typically we would do shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so I would get off of work at 5, go home, put a face on real quick to go do a 7:00 show, and then, go to work the next day and do a Friday night show, Saturday night show, sometimes a Sunday night show, and then, go back to work, And it was never overwhelming to the point where I couldn't handle it. Yes, you're tired, but life is tiring, so you just kind of go with it. When I was involved with Reign 14, with Roberta and Tom, we did shows literally every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, every day, every week. And so it was and we raised, $100,000, for that year. And so it was great. But then you're Monday you're just going to work and you're like, why am I doing this to myself? Why, but you do it. But yeah, you worked full time. And then you did other things, you were going to the movies with friends, you were hanging with friends. But a lot of the friends that I have were involved with the court. So it wasn't like I wasn't able to just have those relationships wherever I went. So I was you'd say, oh, I'll see you Friday night, or I'll see you Thursday night, or, kind of stuff. So you didn't miss out on friendships, because Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you're I just got to stay home. I'm not going out. And then I was involved with different boards. I was the president for PFLAG for a lot of years. I was involved with Glisten's board. I was helping them with fundraisers. I was involved with Carical's board. I was helping them with fundraisers. And so, you're doing all that other stuff on the side. So you're going to board meetings, and then, you're doing this, and you're writing a newsletter, and you're, just all kinds of stuff, So you stay busy. You don't sleep a whole lot, but, And then, then I would help out with Northern Kentucky Pride when they got started. And I was part of them when they first got started. I was I'll help out, doing that kind of stuff. A friend of mine, she messaged me and she said, I'm putting on this event. I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And it was when we started doing Suicide as a Drag. And for the AFSP, which is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, we started doing that. And she was like, I want to do this. And so we did that every year. And then, but a friend of mine told me, she said, she would ask me to do all these events, and I'd be like, yes. And I'm one of those people that would I will put everything I have into everything I can, I'm doing, kind of stuff. And she said, I ask you to do all my events because I ask the busiest people to do my events because I know they'll prioritize what they need to do. And then my events will be, and so I'm like, yes, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, kind of stuff. And you're just but yeah, it's a lot. When I first moved here, I was told that Cincinnati was very conservative, very held back, and I didn't want to see a lot of that stuff. But being in the midst of it, I have never felt that with Cincinnati, which I'm very thankful for. I never felt that Cincinnati was a conservative state. I mean, I know we're in a red state, being Ohio, but it's I never felt that Cincinnati was oh, you can't do that, or you can't do that, or you can't do that. I've never felt unsafe walking, from bar to bar, or going from bar to bar, or walking into a bar in drag. I've never felt, I lived downtown for a long time. I would walk the streets at night, because the library was always a place where we had meetings. So walking home from the library I would never felt unsafe. I would work to the cabaret, and so I'd walk from Court Street to the cabaret. I'd walk from the cabaret to the Court Street to go do a show at Shooters or the Birdcage. So I never felt unsafe doing that kind of stuff. And it was nice when Chris Seelbach was elected, that we had, first openly gay councilman. And I never felt the pushback from that kind of stuff. I know that it's out there, and I've heard people encounter that, and I've always felt very thankful that I've never felt that. I always feel bad for people when they say, oh, this is how I feel, this is how I feel, in their jobs, whatever. My jobs, I've never had a problem where they've said, don't do this or don't do that, don't talk about it, When I worked at the nursing home, we had to call each other. We called each other by names. Well, Roberta worked with me, and so we had to talk. We had to train ourselves to say our boy names, and not because our job didn't want us to say our girl name. I couldn't call her Roberta, but because we had residents who were very confused. And we had to work with the dementia patients, and I'm in order to not confuse them, I couldn't call him by a different name. And so people they wouldn't understand. I'm looking at a man. You're calling them a woman, and so it's but none of my jobs have ever said, don't do this or don't do that within respect to my sexual identity. So I guess I did have some mentors and older people that I was in conjunction with that would talk about the past of Cincinnati and how it was with, with Maplethorpe's, art exhibits and how PG and people working in PG how they went and did the whole inclusive stuff. And so I've heard the stories, which is great because we have to know our history. We have to know where we came from and where we're at, where we're going, And so I'm never remiss to know that those people fought for where I could be today, to fight where those kids are now today. We have a lot of younger queers and gays and, lesbian, youth, and I say youth, anybody under 30 is a youth to me. So I'm like, so we have a lot of younger ones that are coming up that don't necessarily know the history. And like, I always am like, you need to remember where we came from. Like what you're doing now is very easy and very like, yes, we're great, we're out here, we're able to do this kind of stuff. But these people actually had to fight for that and could have lost their jobs and could have been killed and lost their homes for me to be able to say, I'm okay, I'm comfortable doing that, for you to be okay, to be 100% okay in your society. Even with what the current climate in our news right now, we are still much better off than what we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so in moving to Cincinnati, I have a lot of I'll say older because they're a few years older than I am, people that I, would hear things, and, like working with Cheryl Eagleson at WAIF Radio, was it WAIF? Yeah, WAIF. And, being on alternating currents. And that's like a blast of the past. We would go on there every weekend, talking about things that were going on in the communities and it's like that. And the things that you talked about were very prevalent at the time to say, this is where we're going, this is what we need you to do. And it was very much a fight, but it wasn't a hard fight because of people like Michael Chanick and John Bell and, Cheryl Eagleson, who had fought already for us to be where we're at. So we are celebrating 50 years of Pride in Cincinnati. We're not necessarily celebrating Cincinnati Pride as 50 years because as an organization, we've not been around for 50 years. We started out in 1973, with a very small group of people doing this. It wasn't done for a few years, then it was back on, it was back off. It was very sporadic, but for 50 years, we've done some type of something related to Pride. Peaches Laverne was a Grand Marshal for many of those years because she was the most historic person in our city. Michael Chanick, has been around for a lot of years, a lot of those things that he has been a part of, being part of the center, being a part of, the lesbian archives and doing all that kind of stuff with those, that history part of it and making sure that we always maintain that history. If you don't get his newsletters, you get to sign up for his newsletter because you will get one and he will tell you literally everything that's happened in Cincinnati the last 50, 60 years, which is what we need because we've lost that in transition from from person to person taking over a festival, because although Pride started out as a protest and it's now a celebration, we never want to forget that it is a protest. And every day that we walk out of our house as who we are is a protest. And and we have to remember that. A lot of younger kids now they want to stand up and fight, which is fine, and I'm all for it. But I'm also like, every day you walk out of your house, dress the way you want to dress, being the person you want to be, that is your protest. And you have to remember that. That is a protest. And so some of the people that have fought 50 years ago not necessarily going to want to fight the same way, and their protest is not the same as yours, but Michael Chanick waking up and walking out of his house is still a protest, kind of a thing. So, gay hotspots in Cincinnati. Oh my God, there were so many. When I first moved here, there were probably, there was the Pipeline, Shooters, Spurs on Broadway, the Dock, Below Zero, the Cabaret, Main Event, Subway, Hamburger Mary's, and so those were places you went. And so we would literally bar hop just about every night. And so, like when we would start out at one, and then traveling up north to Old Street, up in Monroe was another bar that some of our members own. And so we would start out, at Shooters or at Spurs when we have a couple of drinks there, and then you would go to another bar, and you would go to another bar, and you just travel. And so you try to hit as many as you could in one night. There was always something going on in them. There was always a show going on in most of them. Like I always say, there's a show in every bar, in every night of every bar in this city. So you can always go to a drag show. But a lot of those places. Oh, and then there was Yada over in Northern Kentucky. Pike Street Lounge was there for a while. So you would have all these hot spots that you go to, and sometimes you would say, I'm going to start out at Spurs and I'm going to end up at Shooters, and those are the two places you go because your friends were going to end up here, or you would go to one bar and you'd meet your friends and you're like, oh, I haven't seen them for a while, I'm just going to stay here, or you might be too drunk to go anywhere else. And this was way before Uber. So like Uber didn't come around. It was probably a thing, but we never had Uber. And so you would have people picking you up and driving you home and that kind of stuff. But a lot of it was walking from bar to bar because Shooters and Spurs and Pipeline were all within a walking distance. So we would walk from place to place, and then we'd walk to on Broadway sometimes or go hang out there. And then, Sundays were always a fun day because then Adonis was open on Saturdays and Sundays. So Adonis had a pool, so we'd go do swimming parties and do cookouts. We had cookouts a lot of places. And a lot of the bars did fundraising as part of their weekend events. And so like Randy on Broadway on Sundays would have a cookout, and for $5 plates, he would buy your chicken and you would bring side dishes, and then all that would go to a charity. And so people would come in and would have their dinner. Fridays we always did drag shows at Shooters every Friday. And oh my God, it was crazy. And just the amount of people that would just try to cram themselves into a bar and then go to another bar and go to, and stuff like that. And it was never, like you always knew somebody in every bar. And so like now, when I don't go out as much, and so like when I go out and I see someone, I'm like, oh my God, I remember them, but I don't remember their name, because like I remember them from, this place, or I remember that, hanging out, and then you would travel to other cities and you go to Lexington or Columbus or, Dayton or whatever kind of a thing to see those people that you didn't see too often. But yeah, Cincinnati had a lot of hot spots for a while there, when I first moved here. And it was always like, you look forward to going out. Like I remember, it was so funny. There was another place over, Bar Monet was in Covington as well. Crazy Fox, I'm trying to think of all the little bars. Oh my gosh, there was so many. But like my friends and I lived with Thais Raines for a while. And like, if I got a new pair of heels on Tuesday, then on Wednesday I was going out in drag because I'm like, I got new shoes. You got to break them in before you go out. So we get all dressed up on a Wednesday night to go bar hopping. Like, I'm like, I got to work tomorrow morning, just like, but to be young again. So, and now we have like Good Judy's is out there. We also had Club Bronze was there for a while. Jacobs and then turned into Club Bronze. Serpent, which you may not have ever been to the Serpent, but did you go to Serpent?
I remember its final days.
Yes. Kind of now it's Tilly's Lounge. I remember going from doing a show at Club Bronze and then going over to the Serpent, hanging out in the Serpent for a while and going back and then going, just like all that kind of stuff. And, but like now, now they have like Good Judy's and Mixwell's and trying to think of all the ones. And then, we do stuff like at there's a tavern over in the Northside Tavern. We do stuff there. So there's so many places that, that are a hot spot now that you just have to look for. Cincinnati's full of places to go. It's crazy. So it's always been, it's kind of weird. The bars would cater to, you would go to a certain bar for the clientele. And so like if you went to Yachty Club, it was more lesbian, if you went to Shooters, it was more gay men. And there would be some straight women there, but not a lot. The influx of straight women didn't happen until a few years ago. But each bar catered to their own clientele, but everybody was welcome. So like it wasn't, so like when you went somewhere, you knew what to expect when you went there. And if you were comfortable with that, you could go. But if you didn't feel comfortable, you're like, I'm not gonna go there. Like, the Serpent was open, and I will reference this because this is what happened is the Serpent was open to the public Monday through Thursday. But Friday and Saturday, it was leather. And so like when I would come here to visit, we would go to the Serpent, you had to wear leather in order to get in. And it couldn't be like a leather belt or a leather pair of shoes. It had to be actual leather. And so like we had leather vests and leather pants and all that kind of stuff. And you fit the criteria that they expected. But they didn't also, and on the weekends, they would tell women and lesbians and that clientele that, hey, this is what happens here. You're more than welcome to show up, but you're going to see this. And so if you don't feel comfortable, this may not be where you want to be. And so I think that more people were more like, okay, I'm not going to go there on Friday. I'll go there on Tuesday, because that's, kind of a thing. But then there were bars like Shooters, it was a country western bar for the most part, that did drag shows every weekend. And so it was very like mixed crowds. We get a lot of, with the court especially, it was a lot of women, a lot of drag, that kind of stuff. And so it was very open to that. On Broadway, was predominantly gay men. You know, there was a few women that went, but they were more friends of the people that went there. And so like Sundays were very open to the public, open forum. So it would be like, you know, you would be a mix of people because people would want to go in there and drink and just, it would be summertime and it'd be open patio and all that kind of stuff and cooking out and all that kind of stuff. And so it's more family environment. But yeah, so I think that there were places that people didn't feel comfortable being, but they were always welcome. They were never made to feel uncomfortable because of who they were, but because of just what the climate was around them. So to me, no, I did not see that. I'm sure somebody experienced that. It was never my experience to have like a segregation of class and race, that kind of a thing. Because like when I went into a bar, I just kind of just realized who was there, went for a purpose, went for a show, went for a fundraiser kind of a thing. So whoever was there. Within the court system specifically, we were open to anybody. And so I had a mix of both, female, males, black, white, that kind of a thing, rich, poor. I would say none of us had any money. We're all poor, but, we're all working. So, but, we looked out for each other too. So like if we saw somebody, there were people in our groups that were less wealthy, less fortunate in the financial situation, I would say. And so we would make sure that they were like, do you have a ride home? If they were taking a bus or taking a cab. We had a couple of people that would take the bus from Covington over, and we would say, okay, well, we'll get you home because it's too late at night for you to take the bus and the buses don't run. You're not going to take a cab. It's $20 to take a cab. I'll drop you off. Or, somebody's like, hey, do you want a shot? Do those kind of things. And so it's never like, oh, I know they don't have the money. Oh, I know that they're poor, or this kind of thing. It was just like, these are my friends. I'm going to take care of them, And I think that that's I don't want to say like a bad thing now, but it's almost kind of an issue where people don't look at that now. Like when they go to a bar, there's like, I don't see people, the younger generation, and I don't know if it's just because they don't want to, or if it's because something has changed, or if they just don't know. Like there's no like, I'm gonna buy a round for the table, I'm gonna buy everybody a shot, or there's none of that. And not that it's a bad thing, because you don't have to, but it's almost kind of like, that was our way of just like, if I'm gonna be drunk, you're gonna be drunk, kind of a thing, and it was our way to be together. But I also don't drink, so I'm like, I don't buy things for people, I'm like, so like I drink water, and I go to the bar because I don't drink. And so I don't know if it's just because I'm just not noticing it, or if it's just that it's just not done anymore, And with COVID, we got out of that being out every weekend, that people may not know that that's, oh, let's do this, or let's, they have one drink and then they're done, and, kind of stuff, or, so, but I don't think that there was ever a differentiation or segregation of people within my experience. When I first started going to bars, I was, right out of high school, 18, 19, 20 years old. So like, we were actually talking about this the other day, like Ashley West was one of the first drag queens I saw. And I saw her in Lima, and I was just enamored with the whole aspect of it. And it's very much a celebrity thing, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to see Ashley West tonight, and that kind of stuff. And then when they would talk to you, it was even like, oh my God, yeah. And so, and coming to Cincinnati, Stacey Alexis, I worked with Stacey Alexis a lot, Ashley West worked here a lot. And so, like, when I started working with those girls. So like I got started with the court and working with those girls. I didn't know any of them. And they were like, okay, this is great, kind of stuff. And then like, I met Penetration. And then so, by the way, we're the same age and born on the same day. Yeah, kind of crazy. She's older. So I would meet these and so like that. So then when I got into these, like with Ashley West and Stacey Alexis and Stephanie O'Neill and getting to meet them in Scirocco and meeting these people, it was just like, wow, like this is where it all started. This is how it started, who the people were that started all this. And so it's but then it was also kind of like, we just became friends. Like it was like, they just kind of like pulled you in, kind of a thing, and you became part of who they were, and you would travel together and you would go places together, and like there are YouTube videos that's crazy that of Stacey and Alexis and I performing songs together, and I watch them like, oh my God, I remember that night and what we did and how we were and just all that kind of stuff, and and then being out with seeing Scirocco perform and just watching, and there was another one. what was her name? I can see her. She just worked at the subway all the time, and just seeing those kind of people and meeting them was very starstruck, in the sense. But then you become ingrained in who they are, and you're just like, oh, they're just like me, kind of stuff. And then you go to their house and you hang out with them at the restaurant and all that kind of stuff, and you're just like, oh, no big deal. It's no big deal. And so now it's funny because like I'll meet people and they'll be like, oh my, and then like I had somebody tag me one time. I'm like, and I met my favorite, I fangirled over Brooklyn, and I'm like, why? I'm nobody. Like, I'm just like, it's so weird when people say that kind of stuff. And so
That's you now.
yeah, I know, it's so weird. It is so weird. It's so weird. And it is fun because, like working at the cabaret, I worked there for 11 years, and, you get up there and you do this stuff, and then people want to take your picture and they do all kinds of stuff. And, it's like, oh my God, does that just annoy you? And I'm like, it doesn't annoy me because it's what I'm there for. Like, I got started in this because of this. And I said, but if they weren't there to take the pictures, then then eventually I'll be gone. Like there's no purpose, and so like when people are like, oh, can I get a picture? And I'm like, yes, and and that kind of stuff, you're doing it. And it's funny and it's crazy, and I've done videos for people's boyfriends. It's just wild. You're like, I don't know what's going on. Not those kind of videos, but just like saying hi and talking to people, whatever. But like I will remember, like I was roommates with Mystique Summers, and she had come in. She had moved here, and we became roommates. Well, she went on a cruise for Drag Race, and she had Michelle Visage send me a video and talk to me, and I was Star Trek, and I still had the video, and I'm just like, oh my God, I cannot believe Michelle said my name, just like, never. And I met her when she came in for Pride, and we were talking, and she was just the sweetest can be, but I'm just like, just like looking like, kind of a thing. So it's very interesting and very, and it's gotten me to meet a lot of celebrities in the realm of, especially doing Pride. That we get to, meet all these stars and all this kind of stuff, and all this local talent is out there. And I try to make sure that those people, and I feel kind of like, I hate to say this, but like a mother to some of these girls, because I've been around them for so long that I'm just like, I want to be protective, and I want to make sure that, and so like when I quit the cabaret, retired from the cabaret last year, my last night there, we were doing the whole thing, and I didn't tell anybody I was quitting. I was just told Nigel, of course, but this is it. This is my last night. And then the girls came out afterwards, and they all tipped me to my last number, and they were crying and whatever. And we talked about it, and I said, literally every girl on that stage, I was part of them being brought onto the cabaret. And so like I was the one that was there the longest, and I'd started out, in the beginning, and like I was there, and I'm like, I brought every one of these girls to this stage, and I always like made, and they were like, you've given us so much opportunity, and you're doing all this kind of stuff for us, and then I'm like, yeah, but it's like I'm not doing that for my benefit. That was for you, putting you out there is because it's easy for me to get you involved in stuff, and I said you're great performers and that kind of stuff, and then I had a benefit back in December, a personal benefit for myself. And like, I was not expecting a big thing. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a little, this or whatever, like kind of thing. And it was like, there were like 26 performers and all these, like 400, 300 people in this place. And I'm just like, I was very overwhelmed, but everybody was like, because of what you did for us, we have to, give that. And I'm just like, but to me, I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary that you wouldn't do for somebody, And so I didn't look at it like, oh, I've done all of this for you, you got to do something for me, kind of a thing. And I was very appreciative and very overwhelmed, and just like, oh wow, and like people are like, you don't know what you've done to this city, who you've been in this city, and you're like, you can mention your name just about anywhere, and somebody's gonna know who you are. They might not recognize you like this, but they're gonna know your name. They're gonna see, kind of know what you've done and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, so it's kind of it gets a little wild. There was an LGBT center we had here for a while. It was over in Northside, and we would do. I was just talking about this with a friend of mine. We would do things like on Saturdays. Once a month we had what we had. I want to say it was called. Don't even ask me. I can't remember. But we would get together, like all the organizations would get together and talk about what was coming up for the month. And so, like I think it was the first Saturday of the month, we would get together because we didn't have Facebook. We had just gotten MySpace. That's how old that is. And so we didn't have a way to advertise. So we had to do flyers and posters and that kind of stuff, emails. And so we would get together this one Saturday a month, talk about all the stuff going on. So like, excuse me. you see any LGBT organization, Caracal, Glisten, PFLAG, we get together, talk about their events coming up, hand out flyers. We take flyers with us so that we could pass out at our events and tell people about them at our events. So the center was always a key focus for us doing that. But other than that, restaurants and bars were pretty much it, you know. Oh gosh, that was early on. So that was probably 2002, 2003. And John Bell was the one who did the community activities on Saturday. Michael Chanik was part of that. I want to say Joe Penna was the executive director. I'm trying to think of everybody's names. There was one guy, I cannot remember his name. He was the executive director before Joe. His name escapes me. Harold Kutzer. So, you know, get involved with them, just being part of that, just that community activism part to showcase our events coming up was pretty much all I got involved with. And then, you know, we would do some fundraisers for them and that kind of stuff. And then they closed down. I want to say, I don't even know when they closed down. It's been so long ago. Because the last we did move Pride from Northside, because we outgrew Northside, into downtown. It was July 4th weekend, I remember. That's been 40 years ago. Or not 40 years, 10 years ago. It was like our 40th or 41st year of being Cincinnati Pride, being Pride. So, oh my gosh. My first Pride was, I want to say, probably 2003. It was at Northside. So my first Cincinnati Pride was, but then we would come up, we would go to Burnett Woods, line up, do all the stuff, because we would do stuff at Burnett Woods. We would line up, we would go through, all the way through into Northside and dump into Hoffner Park. We would go right in front of Jacobs, and they asked me to help Cheryl Eagleson, who was the host of the parade, to help her host the parade. And I said, sure, no problem. So I get there, and I'm all dressed, whatever. And she's on a scaffolding outside this apartment window. And she gets out of this apartment window, she's on the scaffolding, and she's like, you want to climb up here with me? And I said, absolutely not. Because the scaffolding was like, and I'm like, I'm not going to climb up there. So I said, we're going to do this. I'm going to do it on the street, and you can be up there. And she played music, and she had a whole DJ system set up, and she played music. We talked, we bantered back and forth, and then I would interview people on the streets and talk about the Pride, and then as they would announce, we would say things, and it was very exciting. It was very, like the energy was just so impactful, because once you came down that hill off the viaduct, it was just, everybody was just clamored right there, and it was just so overwhelming. And I did that for a couple of years. And then 1 year I did not do it, and I walked in the parade my first year. I want to say probably 4 years after that, and again walking across that viaduct into Northside was that energy was just so encapsulating, like it just kind of overtook you, and you were just like, and I walked with PFLAG, and I was just like, the energy that those people had, and it carries every year. Like even now, when I go to do Fountain Square, so we have it on Fountain Square now, so that's where we host from. I've hosted there for a lot of years. And so when we did it the first year for downtown, when we moved it to downtown, July 4th weekend, I have no idea. It had to be 2013, 2012, 2013. Yeah, 2012, 2013. We moved it was July 4th. It was hot. And you're on asphalt, so I kind of was like, I remember Deborah Cox was one of our entertainers, and we had the whole street closed down, and we had all this stuff going on. But I remember they were taking nominations for Grand Marshal, and so they had asked me to host the parade, and I said yes, of course. And then George Crawford, who was in charge of it at the time, he said, well, we have a problem because you've been nominated and to be a Grand Marshal, and you're also the Pride MC, so I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, well, you tell me what you want to do, and I'll do whatever you need me to do. My thought was, I want to be the Pride MC because I like to be in front of people and talking, but also because this isn't a historical event, because it's the first time we've been on Fountain Square, kind of stuff. But then I also thought, but it's also the parade. I think that was its 40th year. No, it wasn't. That was the year before. It was the 39th year, I believe. Anyways, one of those years. And I said, and I said, but that'd be historic to be a Pride Marshal the first year we was downtown. And I think it had been downtown at one point. Then that's when they moved it to Hoffman. So it went back and forth. But to go back to downtown, because we had outgrown the space, was very remarkable for us. And so he said, well, what we'll do is we'll drive you in as the Pride Marshal, and then when we get to the spot, you'll be the first person to be the Pride Marshal. Then when you get there, you just get out of the thing and take over emceeing. And I said, okay. And it was very energetic, and it was so very impactful. And then so we've done that for a lot of years. But again, going down there, you see all these people, and they're just milling around, whatever, and music's playing and all kind of stuff. And the moment I start talking, and I literally let's start the day, and I always scream out, "Happy Pride, Cincinnati," or something to that effect. And that crowd just erupts because now they know they're ready, and they're ready to party, and they're ready to have a good time. We have our, and I always say, and it's probably not a good way to look at it, but we didn't have protesters for the first few years that we were down there. And now we got protesters, and I'm so excited because we have protesters because now we've arrived, and I would say that. And it's probably triggering for some people, and I'm very alerted to that. Like, I don't want to make, so I just tell people, don't pay attention to them. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're always going to be here. We're here for us, to celebrate who we are, and that whole thing. And so it's very impactful. We have a lot of, people that are in the parade. We have a lot of, stuff like that. But yeah, it's a lot. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. I've been a part of the festival parade something since 2003. And I host the main stage at the park. I've done that every year. Even the year that I didn't was not even emceeing the parade. I still hosted at the park, at Hoffner Park. Hoffner Park was fun. It was very small, of course, and it was like you could do one loop around and you were done. Now it's we have 3 parks. We have to go through that kind of thing. It's an all-day adventure. Once I get to the park, I don't ever leave the stage until it's over. But it's a lot. A lot of people, last year there was upwards of 250,000 people there. So it's grown a lot. I remember starting out with, 100,000, 1,000 people, then, 1,500 people, and then you're up to 15,000 people, and then, and you're like, oh, it's growing. And now we're at, 250,000 people. You're like, oh my gosh, where are we going to go next? Because if we are outgrowing, so your point, we have no place else to go, But it's great. It's a great thing to have. It's always wonderful to see families. It's always wonderful to see kids. It's always wonderful to see teenagers just being who they want to be, dressed as they want to dress, wearing their colors, wearing, their different color hair, and all that kind of stuff. It's exciting. We've grown within the festival itself. We've grown to include things that may not necessarily have been included before. And so now we have, the last few years we've had it like what we call a sober zone, so it's a place where you can go and not drink. And if you don't want to be around alcohol, we have our liquor vendors and all that kind of stuff, but we have a specific area for those who don't want to drink or don't want to be around it, or that's a trigger, or that's a fall for them. We want to make sure that they're safe and they feel safe and they feel comfortable. We have a DJ for that, So it's like their own little bar setting, that we have mocktails and all that kind of stuff. Not your traditional substandard, vodka or cranberry and orange juice kind of, we have actual mocktails that people created for them so they can have the experience without the alcohol. We have a teen zone now that we've done for the last couple of years where, Glisten runs that now. And they do everything there. They do arts and crafts, and they do a painting class, and they do this and they do that. Whatever they want to do, we find a sponsor for them so that they can do it. And so that they bring their volunteers in, they sell their merchandise, they talk about Glisten, they can do whatever they want. So kids who are coming from rural areas who aren't a part of all that can know that there's something they didn't go to outside of Pride. We've done, this year we're doing an art zone, which we're doing 50 magnets with the 50-year memorabilia, is I would say a memory kind of thing. James Reynolds from Not Your Average Paint and Sip class, I think it's called. He'll kill me if he does that, if I don't tell it right. Is setting up this place where he's going to let people paint. We got 500 magnets. So, you sign up, you go paint your magnet, and you go home. Take something home with you. We're doing a history part. This is our 50th year. So we're doing the 50 years of Cincinnati, Pride of Cincinnati. And so we're going all the way back to 1973 and doing a did you know this, did you know that, what it was. We're going to do this whole area just with the history of what Pride is in Cincinnati. Maybe some other prides included, how it started, where it began. Like I said, Michael Channing provided all the information for me, so it's very easy to put together. So that's nice. We're going to do little trinkets throughout the park. Like, my thought is to do hang little billboards that say, did you know that, in 1975, Peaches Laverne was the first Grand Marshal, just things like that. How the colors got started, just whatever it is we want to point out there about the history of Pride, both Cincinnati, local and national, is what we're trying to focus on. We, of course, have all our corporate sponsors and all that kind of stuff. We have a family fun zone that's geared towards, kids. We have blow-up houses and all that kind of stuff. Face painting and clowns and all kinds of, we have all of our local drag coming out, of course. Just trying to think of all the stuff that we have. We have a 3 stages now. We only had 2 for a long time. Now we have 3 with entertainment and that kind of stuff. We have the roller girls are going to do something, and then we have another skating group that wants to do an interactive. I say interactive. They're going to do some kind of skating party or something. I don't know. Out there, they're going to rent skates out so people can come skate. I'm like, I haven't been skating in years. Don't want to, but it's been fun, But it's just things like that. So we try to make it all inclusive for our community as a whole. So I know the library is going to do some interactive stuff with the interviews that they're doing, and so I think that that's going to be great. The history part of it is going to be exceptional this year. So we're trying to make sure that happens. And of course, we have Fountain Square with the parade. Cincinnati Pride became in itself about 5 years ago, I want to say. We became a nonprofit. So initially, Cincinnati Pride was run under the LGBT Center, and they housed it all, and they did it all in Burnett Woods, all the kind of stuff, and over there, Burnett Woods and Hoffner Park, and then the Gay Chamber. So then the center couldn't do it anymore, didn't want to do it anymore. And the center also did Pride Night at Kings Island. So they did both events. And then they were disbanding and closing down. And so they were like, we can't do this anymore, but somebody's got to take it over. So the Gay Chamber took it on. And so it was under an umbrella of the Gay Chamber. And the Gay Chamber was very active back in the day. They're somewhat active now. They don't do a lot of stuff. They do what they call the listings, which is a booklet of resources and businesses that are LGBT friendly or LGBT, and then of course resources. I know the president of that organization is trying to she's trying to get more stuff involved with the community, get it built back up as a networking opportunity for people who have job listings, all that kind of stuff, to be an actual chamber. So she's working on some of that stuff. So the chamber took it over for, I want to say about 2 years. And I became president of the chamber during that time. And so, I'm sorry, I want to say, let me see, that would have been about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, so 2010? Yeah, 2010. And so, because that was right before we moved to Fountain Square. And then Kathy Rogers and Erica Dufresne were the presidents or the chairs of the organization for Pride. And they were like, we want to make it a nonprofit so that we can get more sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. And so in order to do that, they had to break away from the chamber. And so they started the paperwork, and then it went through them, and they started the process, and then they were the festival chairs for 3 years. And after that, they were like, okay, we're gonna step down, and the process was still going on because it's a lot of paperwork to become a 501c3, and so they started it. Then Sean Baker and I became co-presidents after they stepped away, and then we took it on and finished it out, got it started, and that would have been probably 2015. And then so I think I'm gonna say so that's been longer than 5 years. It's been about 8 years then. So then we've been a nonprofit for that long, and so it's been easier for us to get fundraising stuff going on. It's easier to get sponsorships. It's easier for people to say, "Oh yeah, I want to give to you because they get a tax write-off or whatever it is." which is great for us because now, and I know that a lot of people criticize the corporate sponsorship of it, but we're one of the only prides in the United States that is 100% free, aside from food and liquor. And so you come to the festival, you get to participate most of the stuff for free because we have such good sponsors, you know. And most people want to come and sponsor. We have a lot of people fighting to be sponsors. We have a lot of people, and I say fighting and loosely, but like they're like, I want to do this, I want to do that, you know, and just giving us money. But it also helped us create a scholarship fund. It also helps us with programming outside of that. And so 2 years ago, we started the process of becoming a full-time year-round organization, not just June. And so we do programming all 12 months now. And so we are able to put on programming with other organizations, like with, the Cyclones and with the Roller Girls and with, you know, doing things at different events and venues. That's not necessarily just June centered, but all year long. That way we can say we're an organization, not just a parade and a festival, you know. So the parade and the festival is one day, but everything else happens all year long. And so we do movie nights and we do all that kind of stuff, but all that is because of the sponsorship carries over and all that. So it helps us with all that program for the year. So that we don't, so like we do a full series of movies in the summertime that we don't charge for, which is great because, you know, you get to see these movies that you would not necessarily normally go see, but also like you don't have to worry about paying for it and you just go buy your popcorn and sit down because movies can be expensive. But then we also have parties where we're giving to other organizations, we're sponsoring other organizations. We sponsor, you know, Lawrenceburg Pride and Hamilton Pride and Middletown Pride and, Lebanon's starting its Pride this year. And so like we're helping these other organizations get started. We do a lot of, you know, scholarships towards that, sponsorships towards that, to put our name on stuff. We're doing things with other organizations, like, you know, we're working with the court and doing a thing at the museum. And so, you know, just all kinds of stuff and just getting all these people involved in this kind of stuff, just so that we're a community organization in its aspects. So I would say yes, but I'm sure somebody's going to say no. I would say it does because as long as I've been involved with Pride, it's always been about celebrating who we are. And we want to always maintain that. We had a meeting, we had a little group forum a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago now, where we got a bunch of our people together just to say, hey, with the current climate that's going on with the news, with the bans and all that kind of stuff, we need you guys to participate and tell us what you want us to do. Because as a community organization, we want to do stuff, but we can't do it. We can't speak for everybody. And so I can only speak for myself and the people that I can represent. And so our board is, you know, mainly consists of, you know, we have a few females, queer. I don't think we have anybody on our board that identifies as non-binary. But we want to make sure that those people are included in the stuff that we do. So even though they're not part of the board, we still want to make sure that they're represented. And so we got this form together, and we were talking about what we wanted to do for the community. And somebody had mentioned having a silent protest, like having a silent march, like not making any noise, whatever. And while I understand the concept for that, it was also very alarming to me to know that if we're silent, that the protesters are not going to be silent. And so I don't want to trigger a person who has a religious trauma to hear that coming from them. And so it's also for us to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to be silent about who I am. I've been silent long enough, kind of a thing. And so while I get the sentiment of like, it proves a point and it shows something, it's also available for us to say, but I have a voice and I want my voice to be heard. And we're always saying, my voice needs to be heard, my voice needs to be heard. This is how it's going to be heard. And so we kind of nixed that idea. And so we're going the other route of going back to the actual protest signs, like, you know, carrying signs that say, you know, we are who we are, you know, kind of stuff. Nothing derogatory, nothing inflammatory, nothing quote unquote negative in its sense, like, no, you know, we can't cuss, whatever, because the city will shut us down. So we know we have to follow those guidelines. But we also want those people who want to participate in that to know that, hey, we're willing to provide this for you, so let us know how you want to go about this. And so we as an organization have said, we can provide you with the signs. We'll have them printed up so that they all look the same, the same format, the same font, colorful, however it has to be, logos, whatever we want it to be on there, so that when you're walking down that street, people see that, and it's picked up by the news and all that kind of stuff, and says, this is where we started, this is where we're still at. 50 years later, we're still fighting the same fight. I got my Facebook memories popped up the other day, and it was still like we were going through all of this, where they were trying to shut down drag queen story hours and they're reading all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that was 3 years ago that this has popped up, and it's still happening today. Like, they're still fighting us on this, and like I tell these young kids, I'm like, the fight never ends. I've been fighting for 50 years. You will fight for that many years. You will keep fighting. You will keep fighting. Never think it's going to go away, but never think that it's not going to get easier. And I say easier in the sense that we have the tried and true ways of doing it. We know how it works. We know what we need to do. We know we need to write the letters and make the phone calls and, stage the things and be who you are and walk out your house and tell your landlord off and all that kind of stuff, because this is what you have to do. But also know that these people that have done this before can help you out with that. And, you need these people. And it always takes me back to the song Glory by John Legend and Comet. And it says, it takes the wisdom of the elders and the energy of the young people. Like, both of those have to work together to make this happen, And, there's 400 and some pieces of legislation enact right now to ban trans, athletes or this or that, dealing with trans issues and, drag queens and all that kind of stuff. And it's all covered in certain ways. But, 400 of those pieces have come through, and we know 65 of those have been denied, or put out, and so it's just a process we have to go through, and we will do this every day of our lives, and it's, and it's just a constant protest of what you have to do, so whether you write a letter, whether you make a phone call, whether you carry a sign, anything you do is going to be a protest, and that's what we have to do. We have to maintain that level, I think to improve Cincinnati lifestyles for LGBT youth and LGBTQ youth or people in general, I just think there just needs to be representation everywhere. And so I think a constant representation of who you are, being who you are to those people. And so I think about somebody like Stixon, who every day represents who she is by the way she dresses, by the way she acts, by the way she carries herself. And knowing her for a lot of years, I'm always enamored with her ability just to stay strong. And I know that, she probably thinks I'm not always that strong. And I know that she's not. I know that things happen, and I know things but when I see her, I'm always, just encouraging to say, you're doing the right thing, and encouraging each other and saying, when you see a Vanta Black, or somebody that is living their life and trying to be a representation of who they are, that's the best way to make it better for the next person to come along. Me being a cis gay male, it's sometimes looked at in a negative way because I've gotten so many things. Like I said, I don't feel like I've ever experienced that, and a lot of that is because when I'm out there, I'm not always, shall we say, clockable, or I'm not always, I'm not looked at in a different way. I'm very passable as a white male kind of a thing. And so I get that privilege, and I take that privilege as it is. And I don't want to discredit it or act like it doesn't exist. I know that it exists for me. But I want to take that privilege and bring those people in with me. And so when I go into venues and I'm doing a show where I may be accepted easily, whereas Stixon or Vanta's not accepted easily, I'm bringing them with me. Because when you accept me, you're going to accept them. And so when I take my privilege and I don't take it lightly, I say, okay, I know that walking into a room, I'm going to be looked at very differently than a Black woman or a Black trans woman or a trans woman in general, that I have to say, but I'm bringing these people with me, and you're going to accept them or you don't accept me. And I have to make sure that happens. And it's that in itself is the fight sometimes that we have where we're am I doing this the right way? Am I am I making them an object? And I don't ever want to make them an object for my personal gain. I want to make them an object for what they can get out of that. A few years back, we were doing shows at the Cabaret, these dinner with the drag queens or something like that. It was so we would do a dinner and we would do a little drag show, three of us, whatever. And Chelsea Pearl was one of the performers, and we would do a question and answer afterwards, kind of a thing. And so people would ask us, and somebody asked us how we identified, and I said I identify as a cis gay male. And she didn't understand what that meant, and I said, well, daily I live as a gay man, I don't live as a woman, all kind of stuff. I don't call myself a woman. Like, I will say that in reference to, like, when we're with our friends, I'll be like, ooh, girl, that kind of stuff. You do that kind of stuff. But I don't ever, when I'm in a public situation, like with somebody like Chelsea, who was a trans woman, I don't say I'm a woman, because that takes away from her credibility, and it takes away from who she is. And because they look at me like, oh, that's what, and those people, and when I say those people, like straight, heteronormative, can't differentiate between the two of us. So I don't want to take away from what she's fought for and who she's become, because I want to be flippant about who I am. So I'm very observant of that. And so like when we're in those climates, I don't identify, like I don't say, like I would never, if I'm in a group of people, I would never say, oh, we're women. No, I'm not. I'm 100% male underneath this. She's a woman, And funny story is, like, a lot of my trans friends, I don't know them outside their transness, if that's a word, because I've met them all trans, and so I don't look at them as like, well, first of all, I don't look at them as trans, I look at them as who they are. And so like when, like I have a friend, Alana Rain, and we went to an event once and they were calling her Andrea, and I didn't know who Andrea was, because I had never met Andrea, but that was her biological name. And the name she had changed, but her stage name was Alana, and I always known her as Alana. And I'm just like, and I was like, oh, I don't know her as Andrea, I know her as Alana, because that's who I've met, and I've never looked at her differently. And so, and I have another friend, her name is Bobby Delicious. Her name is Bobby Delicious is her stage name, and she has children. And her daughter and I were friends, and her daughter came to see me and Bobby in a show. And she said, I'm here to see my dad. And I'm like, well, who's your dad? And she was like, and she pointed like, my dad. And I'm like, and for about 10 minutes, I couldn't comprehend that was her dad, but I knew her as Bobby Delicious. Like, I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't, and like it took me a good 10 minutes to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like now, because it had to come together. And because when I look at somebody, I look at them who they are. You know what I mean? And so how you present yourself to me is who I'm going to see you as. And, we were talking about this earlier at another meeting I had about pronouns. And I said, I'm one of the old gays. Like, pronouns are the hardest thing for me. I'm not disrespectful of them. If I don't know what they are, I will say a pronoun. If you correct me on it, then I'm going to use a pronoun. But I would rather call you by your name, because that's the more respectful thing for me to say, because then I won't mess that up. I'm not going to say she and it be a they, or a he and it'd be a then, or a she, like it just, and I'm like, oh, so let me just call you who you want me to call you, kind of a thing. And so I was like, so that's how you present, but like, it becomes a little bit of a struggle. It's just really important that we remember, who we are, where we came from, where we're going, that everybody is important in this process, from the, like I say old queers like Michael Channing. I know Michael Channing most of my 20 years being in Cincinnati, I'm pretty sure. And we did things, back in the day when we first started. We did faith nights where we had, representation from all the faith communities come together. And we still kind of do that, I think. We do, just different things so that people are involved and feel included from where they're comfortable at. And so it's very much important that, and if Cincinnati Pride, if you don't feel like Cincinnati Pride is involved in that aspect where we're like, you don't feel like let us know, because we need to know. And we try, and but we're only, we're 15 people now on our board. Yeah. But again, we can only do what we know. And so if we don't know, come to us with a suggestion. Say, hey, what about this or what about that? We have many organizations we support. We support Cincinnati Black Pride, and we try to make sure that they're involved and they're getting their accolades and what they're doing, because they're doing a lot of good work. We have I'm trying to think of other, the Urban League is getting involved with this, that kind of a thing. And we have some of our members that sit on those and just that kind of stuff. And, and just, getting more, when I first started, there was no women involved on our board. It was, or not as many. There was a few, there was a couple. And now we're getting more inclusive and, more, we have more allies, we have more, queer women, we have, bisexual women, whatever they, because when you come to the board, we're not asking you who you sleep with. We're not asking that kind of stuff. We're asking you to do the work. And so like the work is there and needs to be done. And we're looking to branch that out. And, we've grown, and I'd say in the last 5 years, we've grown to that point where we're like, okay, now we've added on this, we've added on that, we've added, where, the things that need to be added on so that we can make sure that we're all covered in all the areas. So if there's something that we don't see happening and that you feel is happening, needs to happen as a community, that's what we need to know. And we, just email us, send something to our website, perfect, and we'll get, we'll see what we can do. Sometimes we just say, hey, we don't have the volunteer status for that. How do you want to do this? Because like when we started the teen zone, we were like, I don't have the capabilities to do this teen zone. So we had one of our board members said, I'll do the teen zone this year. And then we found a group to do that. And they're like, yes, we want to do that. We want to be a part. It gives them an outlet to do that kind of stuff. The sober zone has been done by Glassed every year. So it's perfect and it works in itself. So, because when I first started the board, there were 6 of us that did the entire organization. Then we got volunteers, of course, that come in the day of whatever, but, to get that, because again, people in May say, oh yes, I want to volunteer, but then June 24th, they're like, I want to be a part of the party, and then they're like, I don't want to do, and then they don't show up or that kind of stuff. And, it's like, well, we can't keep doing this, so it's like, so we look for ways to honor our, I don't say honor, but like award our volunteers. And so like this year, one of our board members, Sam Bell, Sam, I don't even know her last name.
Sam Bowling?
Bowling, yes. I was like, I know it's a B. Sam Bowling came up with Concerted, which is you sign up to volunteer, but you get free concert tickets and free Starbucks, and you make points to get these free things from them. And so she got them signed up with that, and so that's perfect, because it helps our volunteers. The day of, the weekend of, we have volunteers. We get them food and we get them snacks and water and all that kind of stuff, and a T-shirt. But I'm like, in the end, is that what they really want? And most people will work for stuff and they'll like, oh, I just want to be a part of it and that kind of stuff. And it's great. We have wonderful volunteers, but it's also like, we want to say thank you in a big way, so that was one of the things we did. So we're working with that. But it takes a lot. Pride is, like I always say, Pride is one day for you. We start this in October, planning this. And the weekend of, it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event for us, so like, I remember being out there last year, and we started at 9 a.m. and didn't leave till 1 a.m., and then back the next morning, so it gets crazy, but there's a lot that goes to it. We have a senior tent, we have, a VIP tent, and, like 3 stages and food vendors and all that stuff has to be brought in and taken out, and we have to clean up and put everything, just like, so, yeah, but. Yeah, it's funny because like we have people like, so every year we did a volunteer party last year, not a volunteer party, but like a volunteer sign up. And Dustin put together this thing where he had people come to the library that were interested in getting involved and what they want to be involved in. And then we had to fill out a sheet, whatever. And then we did one online. And then we did actually one online the day we did our interviews for board. It was hilarious. And so we were doing that, and he was like, we did a volunteer thing, and people could sign up, and he was doing this whole little thing. And we had somebody signed up that wanted to be the festival organizer. Literally put on the paper. Yeah, festival organizer. And I laughed because I said, this person wants to organize the festival, has never been to a meeting ever in the 10 plus years I've ever been to this. And I'm like, comes to the festival the day of, and that's it. And I'm like, so do you even know what this is going to take to put this together? Like, you have no idea. And when you find out, it's like, and so like Megan and I were the co-chairs last year. And then what we do is we do it for 2 years. And then our second year, we start to train somebody else to do it so that they can take over for that year, and then they take over for 2 years. And then their second year, they started training for other people. And so we're training Brandy right now, and she's like, I don't know how I'm going to do all this. And I'm like, you're going to be fine. Like it looks like, and I would say it looks like a lot your first year, and then your second year, like, oh, I got this, because it just falls into place. And like, it's never a new concept. Everything is the same as it was last year, except we're adding a few little things here and there, and we're doing this a little bit different, doing this, and you learn things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's the same template every year, but it's like the whole getting it together is the everyday, like, because Megan and I and Brandy have had probably since October, I want to say 15 in-person meetings, just the three of us getting stuff together, not counting the meetings we have with 3CDC and the police and the radio station and this person that, and security and Home City Ice and just all the other stuff that we had to do. And so, you're like, okay. And literally, we gave up a lot of stuff that we've done in the past, because it used to be the festival chairs ran the whole month. So they did all the events. Now it's just, we're just doing the day of. So, because Dustin does everything else as a program director. And so I'm like, well, we're part of all of that, still, but we're just like, I don't do none of that, but I'm like, we still have all of this still to do. And so, people are like, so, but yeah. Right, I did a thing years ago about being involved in, and I want to say it was private later, but I'm not 100% sure, but about being involved in, and when it was Access TV, about being involved in different organizations. And they said, what is your, it was PFLAG, and they're like, what is your 5-10-year goal for PFLAG? And I said, for it not to be needed. And I said, initially my thought was, we have more funding that we do. And I said, my goal for this is that it never is needed. That those kids who are coming out to their parents, it's just like, okay, thanks, and just walking on, like, kind of a thing. Whereas Glissan's not needed anymore. Whereas, Caracal's not needed anymore, because we have all of the resources we have are done for us. Like we have the medical needs, we have the mental health needs, we have all that taken care of. The housing needs are done. The government's not fighting us to live our lives. All that kind of stuff is because these organizations need to go away eventually, because they're not needed, because it's just a normal part of society. And one day I hope that, although Pride is a celebration and that we want to remember it, I also hope that one day we don't need to be out there celebrating, and we don't need a gay pride parade, because it's just something that's just accepted by everybody, that there's no more fight, there's no need to fight, there's a coexistence for everybody, kind of a thing. Will I think that ever happens? Not in my lifetime, We have too many ignorant politicians right now that are nail biting and fighting us every single step of the way, that I'm like, it'll never go away. But I hope that one day that when kids look back, 100 years from now, they're like, you guys did that? That's crazy to think that happened, that you had to do that, that we had to write letters, that we had to make phone calls, that all that kind of stuff. And that it is literally the rotary dial phone that just went out of existence. Like that's, like kids looking like, what is that? What did you go? Why am I watching this television show? Like, and it's the documentary, like, the Woodstock documentary, like, oh my God, you had to do that? That's what I hope one day happens. So.